Good morning. Welcome to the ZOOMTOWN experiment. For today's video, we're going to be hopefully moving forward with the final version of the Zoomie. Hopefully at this point, I've got all the correct sensors in there and they're all functioning correctly and all the electronics and electrical connections and everything else is right. That's the hope anyway. But what I've got in front of me are the components to finish up the assembly. We'll start first by looking at the existing Zoomie. I created a new modified base for it. That moved this caster forward to make room for the two rear steering photoreflective sensors. These are TCRT5000s, just like the two that are at the front. But these two are digital, whereas those two are being treated as analog. Other than that, the rest of this is pretty much the same, with the exception of some more wires that have to all fit in this nice, tight little package. The camera, this is the tiny code reader camera and an LED. That will be mounted into the front of the Zoomie. It'll actually just slide in and fit in with friction, and every time I take the body on and off, I will be connecting and disconnecting the cable. We'll cover that here in a little bit. Of course, this is Zoomie number 3, so I got to put ID tag number 3 on the top, and of course everything's got to have googly eyes just to be silly, so we've got some of those ready. Over in this area, I've manufactured some PCBs on my CNC router, so they're isolation milled, and that works pretty good. I will be showing you how to assemble the PCB and why I've got the components on the bottom and so forth. This piece here is just a shield to keep this cable, as it comes through the top, from falling into these areas and getting snagged on something. So it's just a way to help keep this little compartment at the top of the Zoomie isolated from everything else so that this cable doesn't get stuck. And a few standoffs will hold all those pieces in place. So we'll start out by working on the body and finishing that guy up. So we'll get these other items out of the way. Googly eyes are just held in place with a piece of masking tape on the inside. Get that positioned about in the middle. I'll reach up in there and poke it through the hole. That's one. There, that just looks so much more silly. Got to have a little bit of fun with these projects or you'll go crazy. You'll also notice now that the Zoomie has a smiley face instead of just an O face. So that works out a little bit better too. Now at this point, this is still a temporary housing for the tiny code reader. And I just have a piece of tape on there to help hold all the wires in place for right now. This will slide in. Get that to come out the other side there. There we go. Pull the wires through. Get this lined up. And we'll just slide it in like so. Then when I go to put the body on, I can connect the connector and then slide the body over the top. For the ID tag, I like to have it like so. I've got two slots here to help with alignment, so I just kind of align it with that and then align it with the radius at the front. It's simply held on with my favorite double sticky tape that I use for a lot of stuff, especially in my circuit board making. This stuff works really, really good. And that is assembled. Now we'll go through, I'll show you how I go about soldering all this together. I believe that'll take a few minutes. Once the needs are sorted out, then it's just a matter of putting together a schematic, and that's what we've got here for this particular circuit board. It's going to interface two TCRT5000 photoreflective sensors using a digital input that'll pass through via this connector to the Pico. The other device is the tiny code reader, which is an I2C interface. And there's also going to be a relatively high-powered LED on that same area of the Zoomie, because this LED is illuminating the surface for the camera to see. Passing the I2C interface, it's just basically passing the signals through on off to the Pico. The switching of this LED required a Mosfet, and in this case TN0702 N-channel Mosfet, and to help limit the current going into the LED, it's just a 22 ohm resistor. So this is what I need on that circuit board, a way to get our signals into it, any additional passive or active components, and then a way to get the signals out of it and then passed on back over to the Pico. So with this, I could go through and design up a PCB such as this, and I can't put this one on this computer. I don't have the software on this particular computer, but that's a really large version of the circuit board. Now, before I got to that phase, though, it is always important to do a breadboard test. So I've got my Pico W on a breadboard. That's the MOSFET. Here's the LED and its associated resistor, and this is powered by an external power supply separate from the USB power that's powering the Pico W. Of course, if you're going to breadboard it, you got to write a program to test it. That's what this one is. Very simple. We're going to import the machine from the machine pin, have a little sleep function in there. I'm going to create a pin, or an output, I should say, based on pin 14. That is an output. I'm going to go into a loop that will set that headlight to a value of 1, which means it should be on. Sleep for 5 seconds. I'll actually probably need to slow that down for this. We'll sleep for a little bit there, and we'll sleep for a little bit here. So we'll turn it on, wait 2 seconds, turn it off, and then sleep 2 seconds, and it'll just keep going around and around. And we should see that lighting up here. We'll go ahead and run that. And we can see, in fact, that it is working. And if I flip it around, I got so much light on this workbench now, you're probably not seeing it really illuminate the surface at all. But we verified everything is functional, and in other tests that I did with this, just to make sure no components are overheating, I left this on for a period of about an hour or so, and then checked the MOSFET and checked the associated current limiting resistor, make sure nothing got hot or anything. All is good, so the circuit is verified. And with that, I was able to go out to my CNC router and manufacture up with isolation milling some little circuit boards that would contain all the components and the interface or connector headers that will go into it. Now, the way I'm going to assemble this is going to seem very upside down for most people. You'll see all the legs are sticking up on the legend side, and all the components are on the bottom, which is really strange, right? Well, not really. In the case of this, I've got right angle headers that'll be going on all locations here. So I need the top surface as clear of obstructions as possible to plug in and disconnect the DuPont connectors to the right angle headers. I'm trying to keep the profile this way as small as possible to fit up, way up at the top inside there, and at the top of the Zoomie, such as this. I need to keep the spacing and clearance in between the board and the Pico, and up above I need that area clear because the top of the Zoomie is, let me get something a little more straight here. Top of the Zoomie is basically right there. So there's not much room anywhere for having stacking up components and reaching over things. So got to do what we got to do to make it work. Now I'm going to go through, solder on all the components, and we'll show you how that'll look on a Zoomie here in a little while. Now, if you've ever done isolation milling and made your own circuit boards, you'll find that they can be a lot more challenging to solder than purchased circuit boards or fabricated by a professional house. That solder mask they put on saves you an awful lot of grief. So when you're doing one of these with bare copper, it's a lot trickier, and it's very easy to get solder bridges across traces. So in order to help me with that, especially nowadays, I had to add a bunch more lighting on my workbench, which actually makes it worse for the camera, but I can actually see what it is I'm doing and not have so many problems. But it is what it is, and I'm just going to go through, get these little resistors soldered on, and then we'll move on to the Mosfet, and then from there we'll move on to the header pins. After all that, a thorough visual inspection is absolutely required. Now on this side, I can go through, trim off all of the legs perfectly flush with the circuit board. Cut all my headers before I start soldering, and that way it doesn't interrupt my workflow. 4. Let's start with an easy one. 3 pin over there, and next to it is a 5 pin, like so. I'm going to start out with these header pins on the one edge. There's 3 and then 5. I've inserted them. I'm just going to set it up here. Hopefully friction will hold it in place, and maybe I'm not that lucky. Let's see if I can get that a little better propped up like that. And I think that still looks acceptable on camera, so we will try that. A little more heat is required on header pins. They got a little more bulk than the resistor legs. A little more mass to them, so they need a little more heat. Sorry for blocking the camera view. I gotta see what I'm doing, or there's no point in doing this. Okay, those are done. Like that. Now I will tackle those two sets of 4, and this is starting to show you why I need the components on the bottom. These will actually be in this orientation, so the DuPont connector will be coming in from this side to connect. I'll probably pry these up at a slight angle to make it a little easier. But for right now, let's get those soldered on. Normally I wouldn't use the vise like this, but it does hold the circuit board at an angle where the glare isn't so bad off that shiny copper. I usually use one of my other circuit board holder vices that are designed to hold it much better than this vise is the way I'm using it. You may notice that I'm being pretty stingy with the solder. Getting too much on there will easily bridge the gaps that the isolation milling performed, and then I got a bigger problem to deal with. So a little bit of messing around to get things to work with what we got to work with. Now at that point, that's how we'll have that one on there. That solders in exactly the same. Now you'll notice too, hopefully you can see that on the camera, these have round pads as opposed to the oval shaped ones. When you're working that tight together, you don't have choice to have the larger oval shaped pads. That guy's going to be in my way a little bit. Bend him back up. Shouldn't make him too mad. And with that, the circuit board's assembled. Now back to the Zoomie here. We've got a little bit of clearance below these standoffs to accommodate the components that are hanging down. I am very close between the Mosfet and these headers right here, rather these DuPont connectors. But this is where it'll go. It's held in place with the top two standoffs that actually hold the body up at its proper elevation. That gets it to that point. Now these wires I want all tucked in like so. And another shield will come over the top like so and keep the upper chamber clear of everything down below and keep our cables from snagging. From here, it's a matter of connecting up all these wires. Now at this point, it doesn't look like much can get caught on here, so I think that'll help keep everybody happy, not tangled. Next up, I connect the body up, And I got to look at my schematic to see the orientation. And yellow goes on the bottom over here. Oop. And of course my hand's in the way of seeing what I got to do, so it's a little bit of a challenge. And that is on. Now, gotta get the body spun around the right orientation. Tuck up a few wires, slide it down. This I knew was going to be a problem. I'm probably caught on a wire. There we go, that's one. Oh, and same wire in two places, the green guy. There. And I'll bet you I got more wires caught up on the front. Oh yeah, I can see where that is. That one's supposed to be there, the tall guy. So we'll get him swapped around. And hopefully we won't get all the wires tangled up again. Like so. And then this goes in a little bit further, like so. And eventually there will actually be a cap on this portion. The Zoomie is now ready to test. Also, you'll notice that I've got much more room here in the back. I got rid of that button there. That is one of our inputs now for the photoreflective sensors at the back. And I can get the batteries in and out now without needing to remove the body. So that's what we got. Next up, we're going to take it for a test drive. Well, as you probably noticed, the Zoomie wasn't moving as wonderfully as I had expected it to. I can't contribute anything to the QR code, the new body design, things like that. So I dug into it a little bit more, and I saw some data like I usually do, graphing out the data so I can understand the numbers so they make sense. And I found some very disturbing information in there. And frankly, at this point, I'm not sure how I'm going to handle it. So what I'm going to do is just digest it a little bit more And in the next episode, I'll get you caught up on what I found, what I think I can do to fix it, or maybe I'll have it fixed by then. You never know. I could get lucky. And from there, we'll move forward with the project. So that's going to wrap up this episode. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode, hopefully with some good news. Take care, and we'll see you then.